Hello everybody, I am Liz, and today I wanted to talk about book recommendations, specifically from all the peeps on the interwebs, on the internet, and this was all brought upon the conclusion of my reading of A Land of Permanent Goodbyes by Atiwa Abawi. I noticed while reading some Goodreads comments that some reviewers would recommend books similar or compare this book to other books. And so I went about on the interwebs to try to find books that are similar to my favorite stories. So without further ado, I want to extend this reader recommends to you guys to recommend books that are similar to these books I mention. Please let me know in the comments down below if anything that you have read sounds similar in any way, whether it's tone, setting, plot, any of those things. If they are similar, please let me know so I can look it up and possibly add it to my TBR and read it too. So first we're gonna go with the book that started this whole thing, and that's Land of Permanent Goodbyes by Atiwa Abawi. This book takes place first in Syria as a family is dealing with the Syrian conflict when their apartment building explodes, killing a majority of the family. Now it's just father, son, and daughter fleeing for their lives through terrorist, religious extremist-ridden Syria into Turkey, and then at the end into Greece. It's narrated by Destiny as they talk about all the tragedies and the courageous people that this family meets on their journey. Now, the book that this is compared to all the time is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. I have regrettably not read this book yet, which is a new type of shame train that you may take part in if you want to. I've really wanted to read this book for several years, and knowing that it is similar and in many of the senses better than A Land of Permanent Goodbyes and has a lot of the same tone, I just really need to jump in it and read it. If you haven't read or have heard about The Book Thief yet, it takes place in 1939 in Nazi Germany, and it talks about how the Nazi regime starts burning books. And our main character, Liesel, happens upon a book in the ashes, takes it into her home, and really is surrounded by a love of books and finds this fervor to read. And a lot of other things happen. We have her foster family taking in and hiding a Jewish person, and so there's a lot of things going on in the background, and it's narrated by Death, and so it's been highly recommended, highly rated, and I just need to read it already. Next up we have The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I have talked about this way back when I first read it. I binge read it, could not put it down, stayed up until 4 o'clock in the morning even though I had to be to work at 7 a.m. because I could not put it down. It takes place where our main character, Rachel, is an alcoholic. She's really struggling to find her place in life after her husband leaves her, and so she takes upon train riding. She rides trains back and forth hours of the day and tries to make sense of her life. However, when she's riding trains, she becomes a bit of a voyeur and looks into people's backyards and windows and homes to snatch glimpses of their lives. This lands her into trouble because one of the girls she periodically watches goes missing, and so she thinks she knows something about it and she's determined to figure it out, which kind of lands her into becoming a main suspect. Now, the book that is highly recommended to read if you enjoyed The Girl on the Train is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I have also already read this and love it so much. It takes place where we have Nick, our main character. His wife Amy goes missing, and he becomes the prime suspect in her disappearance because he has a very flat affect. He is not very socially inept in social cues, and so the police kind of grapple onto him. Because I've already read Gone Girl, I am taking up with the book 2 choice for those that have read and enjoyed The Girl on the Train. That happens to be The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. Now, this book sounds really interesting and juicy. Our main character, Ted, meets a lady named Lily on a return flight to Boston from London. They get a little sauced up and start talking about Ted's marriage and how Ted is very unhappy, and even boasts that he could kill his wife, Miranda, if given the right means. And so Lily decides to help him as well as seduce him, and they start plotting Miranda's demise. For my third pick, we have Genesis by Bernard Beckett. This was one of my favorite books a few years ago. I rave about this and think about it all the time. This book takes place with our main character, Anaximander, who has been studying her school years to take this big test so that she can join a council that leads her isolated island. She wants to join this council and be a leader and a prominent figure, and in doing so, she's detailing the island's past and history. Now, this island is very interesting in its isolation because it became isolated as a virus starts wiping out the entire world and continent, and so they have taken upon this island as a refuge, and this place has become a utopia where all the labor has been split up between everyone, and Anaximander just really wants to find her place in this community. Genesis has been widely compared to as a modern of 1984 by George Orwell, a book I have yet to read. 1984 was published back in 1949 that details a nightmare of a society in 1984 where the world becomes a totalitarian, bureaucratic, scary place where finding individuality is very impossible. The fourth pick I have is A Companion to Uprooted by Naomi Novik. Naomi Novik's Uprooted was another one of my most favorite reads of last year. It takes place in a fantastical fairy realm modeled after a Russian fairy tale. Our main character, Aneshka, is really battling with her place in this little tiny farming town that is really taken over by a wizard named Dragon. Every 10 years, Dragon takes and selects a woman that turns 18 to live with him, and then at the end of the 10 years he sets them free, and usually these women end up leaving to the big rambunctious city citadel of this whole country. Now, Aneshka believes that her best friend Cassia is the one to be taken, as she is the fairest, the most beautiful of the town, and she's completely surprised when Dragon actually ends up selecting herself. And then she finds out that she also has magical abilities, and Dragon is going to train her how to use them, and she takes it upon herself to help Dragon in battling the evilness and the creatures that have been ransacking the towns and the kingdom for generations. The book that's highly compared to Uprooted happens to be The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This also utilizes Russian fairy tales throughout the story as they are woven in, because our main character that sits in a town at the very edge of a forest in Russia, they are being told all these fairy tales by their mother when their mother suddenly dies. When her father takes a new wife and their stepmother becomes this vicious, horrible, really strict person that really wants to do away with all of their rituals and their fairy tales of the past to prepare them and prepare her for womanhood and marriage. At the same time, more evil and treachery happens in the town as crops begin to die, and so Vasilisa, our main character, takes it upon herself to use this hidden power of hers to make things right. This book is said to have some of the same whimsical traits and the really great fantasy-driven story as Uprooted, as well as taking a lot of deep roots with Russian fairy tales. Our last book today is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I absolutely adored reading this book. I loved the circus vibe, the whole love relationship that blooms and blossoms during the rival of these two magicians that pits these two children, then teenagers, together into this battle royale of upstaging each other for the best whimsical circus Now, the book that has been highly recommended as being similar to The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This book has two magicians that are very opposite, very opposed, and it is in the lovely 1800s in London, so it has the same time of period piece as The Night Circus, as well as a big branch and focus on magicians, also like The Night Circus. However, these two gentlemen are very fundamentally different. Mr. Norwell, who collected books to discover these magical properties and abilities, utilizes his magician status to join the military and really boost up the London military ranks, while also feeling that magic needs to be tightly controlled and regulated. Whereas Jonathan Strange, who finds Mr. Norrell and tries to be his pupil, feels very fundamentally different. He's very whimsical, and so he gravitates toward these very perilous and scary forms of magic that really can endanger not only his bond with Mr. Norrell, but also everything he holds dear. Now, as a bonus recommendation from all the peoples on the interwebs, we have a book that is similar not only to The Night Circus, but also to Uprooted. And that is called The Golem and the Jinni by Helene Wecker. This takes place in the turn of the century in New York, where we have our golem named Chava that was formed during a Kabbalistic ritual from a Jewish community in Poland. He arrives in New York, finds Amand, a Jinni formed with fire in Syria, and they're both meet in New York City and form this unlikely bond and friendship that really ties both cultures together. I hope you enjoyed this Internet Recommends video and gained some really awesome books for your TBR that you may or may not have heard about. And I hope you can give me some amazing book recommendations in the comments down below on any of these books that I have talked about. I hope to see your guys' faces again soon, as I post every Tuesday and Friday. I hope you support my channel by liking this video and subscribing down below and following my content and chatting with me on all the other social medias. I love you guys. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye!